Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about the 5 guns that I would pick if I was starting all over and somebody said, hey, you need to just get one pistol that's going to be kind of a do-all pistol, kind of the pistol that you're going to use for home defense, for conceal and carry, for range time, for competition, whatever. And they said, hey, you need one pistol to do all those things. What pistol would you get? It's the only pistol you can own for the rest of your life. So we thought, okay, this is kind of a fun thought experiment. So let's dive in. And I'm going to start these actually in the order that I would purchase them in. So number 5 being the one kind of at the bottom of my list. Number 1 being the one that I would probably be first inclined to purchase. Okay. So before we jump into that, make sure and share the video and comment done down below so you get entered into our $1,000 ammo giveaway. Go ahead and share it right now because I want you guys to win this. It's 1,000 rounds of 9mm. We're going to be shipping out to you. And really, right now, there's not that many contestants up for it. So you got a pretty good shot at winning if you just go ahead and share the video, comment done. And so I had to make a few characteristics of these pistols. And so we're going to start this in order of my least favorite to my most favorite. But any one of these guns would be a very, very adequate gun for, hey, this is my first gun. I don't own any pistols. I don't know what the hell to get. And these guns will work for competition. They'll work for home defense. They'll work for conceal and carry. That's really what we looked at with it. Now, a couple of things on that. We had to pick guns that were quality firearms. So I discounted anything from brands that I consider less than quality. So they may have some obscure one that works really well or whatever. I don't give a shit. I discounted everything that is not a quality brand. So things like Kel-Tec, Taurus is kind of making its way up there. They're getting to be a little bit more quality. And so we may be adding some Tauruses in the future. I got to get a chance to test some really. All the old Tauruses that I have were junk, but I know that they've spent a lot of time and energy in developing some decent firearms for, like $250, $300. So we'll get some Tauruses, but the Taurus is not on this list and they were not considered for this. I will say that Taurus as a company is actually a phenomenal company. They have good customer service and they support all the shooting supports about as much as anybody else or more than anybody else, with the exception of Glock. Glock always seems to support shooting sports above everybody else, but Taurus is a second place to them. So again, I'm not a huge Taurus fan, but we'll see. Maybe my mind can be changed with some testing of some of the newer models. Okay, so quality brands. So we stuck with the big ones, right? Like the Smith & Wessons, the Glocks, the any of the 2011 manufacturers. That was something to consider. Obviously, the Sigs now being kind of a big one in the competition of striker-fired pistols. But did we just include striker-fired pistols? No, but you'll notice that mostly what's on here are striker-fired pistols, and that's because of striker-fire's general reliability. And ease of cleaning, ease of use, everything about them seems to work really well. And again, we built this list for, hey, you don't own a gun. We want to get you one gun that does everything pretty well. Okay, so it's not going to do everything perfect. This is your multi-tool, right? It's not a multi-tool is not as good as a pair of pliers, but it's a pretty good second option, and you have everything else there. So, excuse me, kind of the same sort of thing. So let's start this from the bottom. Our number 5. Now, my number 5 choice, and I'll tell you why it's number 5 in a second, is my Glock 26. Now, I would have this kind of synonymous with the Glock 19, Glock 26, but Glock 26 is a little bit better size for people that aren't used to carrying. You could pick something like a 43X. I don't shoot a 43X. 43X is still a nice gun, but the Glock 19. The nice thing about it is that it does have a lot more interchangeable parts, like a 19 and a 17, including the magazine, so I can run bigger magazines in here, and there's just a plethora of aftermarket parts for it. So I would look at something over like a Glock 26 and a Glock 19 over a Glock 43X. It's also, the Glock 19 is a little bit more shootable. The Glock 26, when you put the pinky extension on the magazine, is also a little bit more shootable. And so these are just really, really solid built firearms. They obviously have Glock's legendary reliability, so that you're going to get a decent quality pistol. You're not going to have any problems with general reliability of the firearm. This one, God knows this thing needs to be cleaned. This is a phenomenal starting choice. And generally when people come to me and say, hey, I've never bought a firearm, what should I get? You know, my old advice was always just go get a Glock 19, buy 10 spare magazines and start learning. Because what I tell people all the time about firearms is you can't just go out and research and buy the perfect firearm that's going to do what you need it to do. It's a lot like playing an instrument. Anybody out there that plays guitar or piano or whatever, if you went out, you couldn't research enough to go buy your favorite guitar for the rest of your life at the very beginning. You kind of have to just buy a guitar and start playing to start figuring out what you like. And guns are the same thing. So Glock 19, Glock 26, it's a safe bet. It may not be the gun that you want to stick with for the rest of your life, but it works really well. Now, the downside to the Glock, and the reason that I put it as number 5, is the grip angle. And a lot of people will say, well, the grip angle is a training issue. And it really is, and it isn't. It is in the fact that you can train the Glock grip angle and you can get to where you're proficient with the Glock grip angle. The problem with the Glock grip angle being at about 115 degrees is that if it's not your natural point of aim, yeah, you can train that out, but then you're fighting against what your body naturally wants to do. And so every other gun that uses a more traditional 1911 grip angle, something around 107 degrees, I find that those point so much faster for me, and I don't have to think about them. And so that's the issue that I run into with Glocks all the time, is that I'll stick it out and it's like, oh crap, I'm looking at the top of my slide. So I've got to make that adjustment. And I've put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of rounds through Glocks. So it's not that I have a thing against Glocks, but it's just a simple fact that when I draw that out, I'm so used to something more along the lines of a 1911 or a 2011, and that's what my body naturally wants to do. But the big thing is that I found that most newer shooters tend to do the same thing, and they say, well, you can train them however you want. It's like, yeah, but the problem is that people's natural grip seems to go more to that 108 degree grip angle, and so it's a little bit harder thing to train out of people. Again, nothing on Glocks, are great firearms, and if you can train it out, go for it and do great things. I have just chosen not to, because it's like, why add this additional thing that I need to focus on and train out when I can buy very good, very quality, very reliable firearms that I don't have to deal with that with. So that's my general theory on the Glocks. Again, guys, I was a Glock fanboy for years. I love Glocks. I think they're great firearms. So don't get mad at me and say that I'm hating on Glocks, but that's why they're my number 5. The other reason that they're my number 5 is because they come with really shitty factory sights, and that to me is a problem for newer shooters, because newer shooters don't like to change out stuff on their guns because they don't know what it does. They don't understand the function of everything, and so they like to buy the guns and have them and have these factory things work well. The Glock night sights are okay, but really you need to be punching out your sights and getting something like some Marigolds, Meprolites, something like I like the Vickers Tactical, Wilson Combats, etc. You really got to figure out what kind of sights you want on there. And newer shooters, they tend to be uncomfortable doing that and start punching things out. So that's another reason why we put Glock kind of at the bottom end of the list. Now, moving on, I would move to something like an M&P. Now, y'all know I don't like full-size guns that much. This is a full-size M&P. So this is their largest one with a 17-round magazine. This is a M&P, the original, the 1.0 or whatever model. And these are very nice firearms. So I'm a big fan of the M&P. This is my number 4 pick. I would pick this a little bit ahead of a Glock, and there's a couple reasons for that. One is because of grip angle and grip texture and everything. The ergonomics just in general are better, and that is something that's important to people that are new, that are buying their first firearm. That is a big deal because they're not used to training around those issues yet. And so that's why I would say, like, hey, let's look at something like an M&P or the Sig or whatever, and kind of go from there. Now, the downside to the M&P is the trigger. The trigger is kind of a junk trigger. I'm not a trigger snob, so y'all know I've really only ever complained profusely about one trigger, and that's on the Smith & Wesson CSX, which has the most god-awful trigger in the world. Everything else, it's like, I can deal with it. Worst case scenario, I can swap out the trigger. Again, I don't like to do that on newer shooters. I don't like to do that on carry guns. I would look at the compact model of this, or even their subcompact, which is the Smith & Wesson Shield. Those are great options. Smith & Wesson Shield is a large enough firearm that it can be used as a home defense gun. I would err on the side of a little bit smaller gun, truthfully. And some people say, well, when you get in a gunfight, no gun is too big. This old Clint Smith analogy, and it's like, well, yeah, that's 100% true. But the problem is that newer shooters won't carry a big gun. They just don't. And so I would rather you have a gun on you all the time and have a gun be a little bit too small for home defense. And when I say too small, I mean that it's just not what our preference is, but it's still a perfectly adequately sized gun, because I'm not going to carry any gun that I wouldn't get in a gunfight with. And so that's why I say the Smith & Wesson Shield or the Smith & Wesson M&P compacts, something along those lines. I would avoid the full-size ones like this. To me, this is just a little bit too much gap for me. I don't like guns this size. Again, when you start getting into this size, it's like, why not just go with a rifle? A few exceptions to that: law enforcement, where this is their primary firearm, right, for engagements. That's kind of an exception to that rule, but for the most part, that's my general feeling on it. I like compact sized guns. I think that they just in general are a better fit for most people. All right, so number 3 on our list is the Sig Sauer P320. The Sig Sauer 320 is a phenomenal firearm. You get really, really good solid ergonomics on here. So as soon as I draw, I am on target. That's why I really like this gun. They have great reliability. They're now being used in the military, so they're going to start being more and more common. You're going to see law enforcement start picking them up. Ambidextrous controls on the slide release. The big thing I like about the slide release is especially for female shooters that have a little bit of a harder time getting on there, you have a really, really big slide release to actually get your fingers on. And so it's very easy to send that slide home, hitting that slide release. It's hard to miss. It's not like Glocks where you have the little dinky one and you have to kind of upgrade them, and even when you upgrade them, they're still not great. These are a very, very fat, big slide release. They work really well. Big fan. This is the Wilson Combat Sig 320. I wouldn't spend the money on it again, truthfully. The factory one is just as good. If you really like the ergonomics of the grip better, just buy the grip panel for $65 from Wilson Combat and be done with it. And I may do that. The factory, the grip that Wilson Combat gives is actually a really good, solid, textured and ergonomic grip. So big fan there. But for the most part, I don't think that the Wilson Combat one was worth it, even though I like Wilson Combat a lot as a company and we do support them. So, but just a simple fact is that I wouldn't spend the money on it. The Sig 320 from the factory is virtually the same thing. In fact, Wilson Combat's trigger job leaves something to be desired because it's not really that reliable. They lightened the striker spring on there so much that it ended up causing us to have a bunch of rounds not detonate because they got too light of a primer strike. So yeah, it might be fine for self-defense ammo, but I need it to be reliable with all the ammo that I shoot. So anyways, for what that's worth, that's the issues that we've had with it. The factory trigger is actually pretty solid on these, so it's not bad. It's better than the M&P, better than the Glock, not as good as a Walther. In the Walther, it's not as good as the Walther. The Walther has a phenomenal trigger pull on it, so that's the only one that I would say is better than this. That's a striker fired gun. Obviously, any hammer fired gun is going to be better. So the Sig Sauer P320 would be number 3 on my list. Great firearm. Get the compact model. Like I said, I really like compact model guns, but this, you can get a smaller variant. We're going to talk about that here in just a minute, but the simple fact is that the compact model of this is a very nice size for both home defense, for conceal and carry. If you're a newer shooter, it may be a bit big for conceal and carry. You can see this obviously has a light on the end. We use this one in competition. This is our Mandolin's home defense gun and competition gun, so she doesn't carry this, so it can be a little bit bigger. But anyways, this is really what we want to kind of desire for it. We've got a gun with really good ergonomics. We got a gun with a good round count. We've got a gun with a good trigger that's reliable, that has good sights from the factory on here, right? Sig actually did a really good job with the factory sights on these, so it's not like the Glock and the M&P where we need to punch those out. We actually have really good solid sights from the factory. So anyways, the Sig Sauer P320, that's my third choice, our third option on the list. Okay. Number 2, we're going to leave this one a little bit controversial because I'm going to pick something a little bit more expensive. So one of the issues is that I went into this and I said, okay, I wanted to do this to do everything under $1,000. I wanted to be able to have a good gun set up for under $1,000. So that was one of the stipulations that I said I was going to do when I made this video. And I kept coming back to this because I really like this gun and I think it's one of the best guns that money can buy. And so I was like, okay, so let's make one exception here. So one exception is the Wilson Combat SF9. Now, this is an expensive gun. It's about $3,000, give or take which model you get, and it is an expensive gun. But if you were gonna buy one gun to do a lot of different things, right? So this is a great conceal and carry gun. This is a great home defense size gun. This is a great competition gun. This gun it's super, super reliable. It works really well. The safety is I don't generally like safeties, especially for kind of newer shooters, but the safety is so intuitive. It just comes off when you get a good grip on the gun. So don't even think about it. It comes right off. And again, I'm on target. As soon as I draw that gun up, my sights are on. It's got great battle sight strength from the factory on here. So you can see we got the nice high vis orange sight, blacked out rear sight on here. It's got great reliability. It is a little bit more expensive, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's outside of everybody's budget. And I would rather have one really nice gun than 4 or 5 cheap chitty guns, right? Because the guys that go out and are going to buy a Glock and they're going to say, well, I can buy 6 Glocks for the price of that Wilson Combat. It's like, yeah, that's true, but why? I would rather have one really nice gun that I take care of, that I maintain, that I use for everything, than I'm using one gun, one way, all the time. That's the way that I want to train. So spending a little bit more money and getting something like a Wilson Combat SF9, the Staccatos are about $1,000 cheaper, and again, very, very nice guns. I don't like the ergonomics on the Staccatos quite as much, and the fit and finish is not as good, but again, very reliable, very nice firearms. So really what I'm telling you, and this one is our number 2, rather than think of it as the SFT, I want you to think of the number 2 slot as a 2011. Any type of quality 2011, yes, it's going to cost more than the other ones. It's also going to be a solid steel firearm. It's an heirloom firearm in that this thing will last several generations. When you're talking about newer shooters, you can't overestimate or underestimate the power of having a good trigger pull. And getting that nice, crisp, clean break to really help dial in and show them what they're doing wrong. Because when they start working on longer shots, that nice trigger pull is a super, super important feature to them. So I'm a big fan of the Wilson Combats in general, but certainly of the SF9. I would encourage y'all to look at that. Even though it is a little bit more expensive, meant to save a little bit more, it is still a really, really nice firearm. Okay. Now let's move on to our number 1 slot. Let me go ahead and pull it out. All right, so our number 1 slot is the Sig Sauer P365X Macro. So this is a phenomenal firearm. The reason I like this firearm, and I put this one as number 1, is one, this gun runs $800, so it's a lot more affordable for most people, and it is a really, really good size for carrying. Even though I love, like I said, I love the Wilson Combat, it is a little bit big for carry. It does work. I've carried it for about a year now, but I've since gone to the P365X Macro. Again, for $800, you get a gun that already has really good quality, high-end sights on here. So these are sights that I would have swapped out to anyway. So this is perfect that this is what they come with them from the factory. I love a big high-vis front sight, basically blacked out rear sights. They did put the tritium inserts in it. I would prefer them to not have it, but not a big enough deal to take out. The compensator is actually not part of the barrel, which makes it really nice. So the compensator doesn't work generally as well as one that's part of the barrel, but you don't have the reliability issue. So it's, again, perfect for a conceal and carry gun. If you don't like the compensator, get the XL instead of the X Macro, because the XL doesn't have that, or the TAC Ops version doesn't have that. So as far as controls, they didn't put an ambidextrous slide release on this. I don't know why, but they did not put an ambidextrous slide release. You do still have a large enough slide release to get your fingers on, but it is more akin to what the M&Ps have rather than what the 320s have. So not quite as much force there on the slide release, but still very, very solid and good for a carry gun. It is a large enough gun that you can use this for a nightstand gun or whatever as well. In fact, I'll use this outside the waistband doing executive protection work. I'll carry this gun doing that. The big thing about that is that it has a really, really small magazine that holds 17 rounds, which is freaking insane considering that the 320 that's bigger and my SF9 that's bigger only holds 15, including my Glock 19 only holds 15 with a flush fit magazine. This one with a flush fit magazine holds 17 plus 1, right? 18 rounds. That's freaking insane how much ammo they got into this little package. And the handle is still very, very thin. In fact, I actually had to put the largest back strap on here because I felt like the handle was too thin with the other ones. So this is a good firearm. This would be my number 1 pickup. Somebody said, hey, you got to go get one firearm that you're going to use for home defense, for competition, for conceal and carry. This would be it. This would be the one that I would go and pick up. Very good reliability, very good quality. We haven't had any issues with them yet. We haven't quite got these through their break-in period yet, but we actually have not had a single malfunction in the break-in period. And when I say break-in period, my break-in period is 1,500 rounds. So, anyways, again, they're already cut for a red dot. So if you like optics, I don't do optics, and I generally don't do lights with my carry guns, but the simple fact is, if you want to do an optic on here, you're already cut and ready for it. You have a very nice, crisp, clean trigger pull. The trigger pull is better than the 320 and more in line with probably the Walther. I would say that this one beats the Walther in a trigger pull. It's a subjective call. Take your pick. But I would say that this one beats it. The ergonomics on this one are very solid. The gun is really, really small, but still feels and shoots like a compact gun. It's a very, very flat shooting gun. This is a great firearm. This is one that I would absolutely have no problem taking overseas and going into war with, and not as my primary weapon, but as a backup weapon. This is one, like I said, I'll use this for executive protection work. I'll use this for concealing carry, and I will use this for competition. Even though I do have better options for competition, I like to practice with what I'm shooting or with what I carry. So my number one pick is the P365 from Sig Sauer. Just a all day long, hands down, phenomenal firearm. So I'm going to leave y'all with that. We've gone on a little bit too long, so let's go ahead and get some of these guns loaded back up and put away. Really appreciate y'all watching. Make sure and like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Share this video, comment done, so you get that credit for the ammo giveaway coming up at the end of August, and we'll catch y'all on the next one.